Welcome back. In our previous lesson, you learned one craft move writers of articles make, and that's to include specific facts, statistics, quotes, and examples in your articles. This lesson also stemmed from a question from last week's Google form. How can we be sure an author knows what they are talking about? So how can we be sure that an author is credible? So I'd like to say that while there are several ways to check for author credibility, including checking what publication the information is coming from, the domain of the website, a lot of things that Mrs. Delafield taught us about in class if you're from Mount Nittany, we also know if an author knows their stuff by noticing if the author uses terms and vocabulary that are specific to the subject or topic of the article. So credible writers of articles use key terms and technical vocabulary. Writers of articles use key terms and vocabulary to engage readers and keep them focused on the topic or subject of the article. So, for example, an article about a restaurant might include key terms like menu, entrees, waitstaff. An article about climate change might use key terms like weather, global warming, planet. You can see how these terms and vocabulary are very specific to the topics or subjects of the article. It is important that writers of articles not only use key terms and vocabulary to show that we are familiar with the topic or subject we're writing about, but that we also define any potential unknown terms for our audience. So this excerpt is from an article, it's a current event titled NASA Probe Successfully Takes Photos of Farthest Ever Space Object. That night, NASA scientists were celebrating the New Horizons probe, which was due to have an encounter at 12:33 a.m. Eastern Time with Ultima Thule. It is a rocky relic from the solar system's early days. The object's name means beyond the borders of the known worlds. Ultima Thule is the farthest space object that humans have ever seen up close. The midnight meeting occurred in the Kuiper Belt, a halo of icy bodies. It's so far from Earth, it takes more than 6 hours for signals to travel at the speed of light to reach the Earth. So stop. Before moving on, find two places in this excerpt that the author of the article explains or defines a key term or technical vocabulary in the above passage. Pause the video to find these two places. So I've highlighted the two places in which the author includes key terms and defines or explains those key terms to the audience. The first one is in the first paragraph. That night, NASA scientists were celebrating the New Horizons probe, which was due to have an encounter at 12:33 a.m. Eastern Time with Ultima Thule. So you might be thinking as a reader, I'm not really sure what that is. And the author anticipated that. So instead of leaving the readers wondering or to look it up on Google themselves, the author went ahead and offered this information for the reader in the article. It is a rocky relic from the solar system's early days. The object's name means beyond the borders of the known worlds. Okay, so we have a little bit more information about that term. In the last paragraph, we have the midnight meeting occurred in the Kuiper Belt, a halo of icy bodies. So again, the author anticipated that the audience might not know this term and gave a definition. So that is the second lesson for the week. And you will be looking at some mentor texts yourself, looking at some current events, articles, and or sports articles. Current events, editorials, and or sports articles. But first, I wanted to show you a couple of other great questions that students had in the Google Forms. There were so many. I just included a few here. One was, how long can my article be that I'm writing? I'm asking you again, try not to consider length of the product in this unit. I want you to challenge yourselves and to be creative within the genre. So focus on the content, what you are writing, rather than the length. Be sure to include relevant information, but don't go overboard. Another great question was, why do news articles sometimes stretch the truth? I know we've been talking a lot about this in class, in English class, that sometimes we have to look and make sure that the author or the source is credible before we cite it, because we don't want to include any articles that might stretch the truth a little bit. And it's true that sometimes authors knowingly or unknowingly insert opinion into an article, which may lead the reader to consider something new or different. Sometimes this is on purpose. Sometimes the author might be trying to persuade more than inform. And sometimes it's not on purpose. Sometimes they're doing it without even knowing, because sometimes we have what we call implicit bias, meaning that we know and feel it inside of ourselves, but we don't even know that we're communicating that to other people. Great question. Another question, do we have to use Noodle tools to cite our sources? Yes. As Mrs. Delafield at Mount Nittany Middle School and your librarian at Park Forest Middle School taught us, it's important to cite our sources both to avoid plagiarism and to prove that our evidence is credible. Okay, those are very important things. We need to continue to do that. That work transfers on to other articles and other essays. And lastly, how do you hook a reader who isn't interested in the article's topic and keep them reading? So I would refer you back to a previous slide, the first lesson, in which we used relevant facts, statistics, quotes, and/or examples in order to engage the reader. You are sure to get and keep the attention of your audience with important evidence that shows you know your stuff. So I'm going to ask that you go back to the initial slideshow that you were looking at, the one where you had to select article writing. And the last slide asks you to look at some mentor texts. You'll have to go to Canvas or Google Classroom, open your document, and look at some mentor text. If you decide you're going to write current events, you're going to look at a current event. If you decide that you'd like to write sports articles, you're going to look at a sports article. If you decide that you might like to write an editorial, you'll look at an editorial. And you're going to look for these two craft moves that authors of articles make in order to engage audiences. So one, you're going to look for authors' use of statistics, facts, examples, and quotes. And two, you're going to look at how do we know that the author is credible? Are they using key terms and vocabulary in order to let the audience know that they know their stuff? Thanks for stopping by, and I hope that you enjoy your study of article writing this week.